Hello and welcome to G.O.B.O Box Office. Today's analysis will actually be a forecast for the yet to be released Star Wars The Force Awakens. To get a better understanding of the Star Wars franchise, we need to first dig a little bit deeper in its history. As we already mentioned in our Star Wars A Phantom Menace analysis, every single Star Wars movie so far has been a giant in box office history. Star Wars The Force Awakens will most certainly be no exception. However, the circumstances of its release are much different than of the previous movies. The Force Awakens is the first Star Wars movie that is not released during summer. Movies released in the time frame around Christmas and New Year's Eve are known to have lower opening weekends and rather make money over time. The current domestic record is held by Jurassic World with its $208.8 million opening, and in all likelihood will not get beaten by Star Wars The Force Awakens. If it managed to pull off such an opening and then continue to perform like a typical December release, the movie would surely grab first place in the USA and Canada. I wanna stress again, however, that with a certainty of 99.9% this will not happen, therefore ending all speculations about a new domestic record. On the other hand, it is very likely that Star Wars The Force Awakens will set a new December opening record, which is currently held by The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey with $84.6 million. By how much will Star Wars beat that record? We worked with three numbers: a pessimistic, a realistic and an optimistic one. The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey is probably suited best for comparison with Star Wars The Force Awakens. The Hobbit hit cinemas 9 years after Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King. The Force Awakens 10 years after Star Wars Episode 3: Revenge of the Sith. Both franchises have an enormous fan base and are box office giants. Star Wars admittedly is even larger in those terms. The hype surrounding The Force Awakens is massive and surpasses The Hobbit's by a large margin. With adjusted ticket prices, The Return of the King is the only movie that opened to over $100 million on the December weekend. If The Force Awakens receives critics similar to the ones of The Hobbit, along with a comparably large release, the pessimistic estimate would be around $110 to $130 million. If the critics can be compared to the likes of Jurassic World, and most viewers are satisfied with the product, the opening weekend can be estimated at $140 to $155 million. Although that would already mean a big leap from the current record and most likely change December release standards, so far no Star Wars movie has been released in winter. Optimistically speaking, should Star Wars The Force Awakens receive purely fantastic reviews and basically just be an overwhelming movie, it is fair to estimate $190 to $200 million on its opening weekend. This would not only surpass but double the current domestic record from December. In this scenario, everything is possible for the movie. What about the overseas and global opening weekend record? Well, The Force Awakens will probably break those records as well. The international market has seen a substantial shift in the last 10 years and has grown immensely, especially in China. The current opening record globally is being held by Jurassic World at $524.4 million. While the record will not be broken domestically, The Force Awakens will gain a lot of ground overseas. Various experts expect the movie to gross some $550 to $615 million on its first weekend, and we consider these numbers to be quite realistic. Let's sum up our predictions so far. Domestic opening record? No. Unless The Force Awakens breaks all rules and turns out to be a box office wonder. December opening record? With all certainty, yes. It looks impossible for the movie not to break this record. Worldwide opening record? Not quite as certain as the December opening record, but still a likelihood of maybe 80%. Overseas opening record? It is difficult to predict how well Star Wars The Force Awakens will perform on the international stage. However, we will think it has a 70 to 75% chance to break the record. Moving on to our final question. How much money will Star Wars The Force Awakens have made when it leaves theaters in 2016? We will once more look at three different cases. In the worst case scenario, which is not that unlikely since that was exactly the case for A Phantom Menace, the movie scores a 3.5 multiplier like An Unexpected Journey and finishes its run at around $405 to $440 million domestically, another $750 to $800 million overseas, and the pessimistic worldwide total would amount to roughly $1.24 billion. This is entirely possible should the movie not meet the high expectations. Overseas, there's not nearly as much hype as in the USA, and ultimately The Force Awakens is a sequel to a 32 to 37 year old trilogy. Take Jurassic World for example, which could be watched and be enjoyed without much prior knowledge necessary. That probably will not be the case for The Force Awakens. Another important factor will be the Chinese market, as China has risen to be the second largest spender behind the USA. However, it is quite difficult to predict the movie's performance in China, since the general hype around the Star Wars franchise is much smaller there. Taking a more realistic approach, we consider it highly unlikely that The Force Awakens will finish its run below $500 million in the USA. The hype has built up, the trailer received positive feedback for the largest part, and the predictions are continuing to rise. It will probably gross $550 to $600 million domestically and $900 million to $1 billion overseas, summing up to a total of around $1.45 to $1.6 billion and placing it somewhere between 4th and 6th place all time. Those numbers are what we are looking at if Star Wars The Force Awakens receives critics like Jurassic World and does well in China. In the case of extraordinary critics and resonance from the fans, the revenue might skyrocket. It seems almost impossible to set a limit in this scenario, but we consider $650 to $700 million domestically to be the ceiling. Overseas, we think the possible maximum are $1.1 to $1.25 billion, yet it would be really extreme to see such an unbelievable boost overseas. Added up, that means a possible $1.75 to $1.95 billion best case scenario for Star Wars The Force Awakens. In order for that to happen, the movie needs the 190 to 200 million opening weekend in the USA, as well as an even better multiplier than An Unexpected Journey. These are the highest predictable numbers without sounding absolutely insane. Everything above would be close to a miracle. Then again, this is Star Wars we're talking about, so you never know. As for the Game of Box Office team, our prognosis is that Star Wars The Force Awakens will match the realistic prediction and gross $620 million domestically and $1.02 billion overseas for a combined total of $1.64 billion globally. What can be said as a final note? We live in a time where a movie like Age of Ultron makes $1.4 billion and yet is considered a flop because the first Avenger just made a little bit more. Regardless of which scenario we are going to see, The Force Awakens will be a success. Will it be the most successful movie of all time? Of course not. Avatar on the top spot is basically untouchable. Will the movie break records? With certainty. It might even be the first movie since 1997 to outperform a James Cameron movie. Will the movie be the most successful in 2015? One would think yes, however this is not certain. It is necessary for The Force Awakens to receive positive critics in order to beat Jurassic World. Our prediction is that The Force Awakens will gross $1.64 billion globally. Jurassic World so far did 1.66. So we don't think that it will beat Jurassic World. We hope you enjoyed this forecast. Our next video will be an analysis about either Prometheus or Iron Man, or a forecast about The Revenant. Be sure to hit like and subscribe to our channel. We also appreciate your support on the social networks listed below. See you Tuesday for the short version of this forecast. See you. Bye bye.